After 5 years, the latest film in the Insidious franchise, Insidious: The Red Door, has dropped in theaters. So let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Share your thoughts on the latest movie in the Insidious franchise. My thoughts aren't the right thoughts. They're just my thoughts, and I would love to hear yours. Before we go into this, my experience watching the last Insidious movie, Insidious: The Last Key in the theater, was my worst experience I've ever had watching a movie in the theater. And so I did a video talking about that. You can check that out, I don't know, somewhere right up here. But I tried to overcorrect because I went with like a packed theater the first time. I overcorrected this time and went at 9 a.m. on a Friday. And I was the only person in the theater watching this movie, which was just kind of funny that I went from a packed, rowdy, obnoxious crowd to just me. But all that said, let's get started with the good. And for me, the best thing about this movie is that it is a direct follow-up to Insidious 1 and 2, where essentially we see where the Lambert family is 9 years later, and how the trauma of those films, as well as the lies and cover-up related to them, have affected the family all these years later. And because of that, it carries kind of a lot more emotional weight to it than the other movies in the franchise. Likewise, you care more about the characters because it is all about them, their connections to each other, how they've fallen apart. And that's really where this movie's best moments come from. Even as you move into kind of the last 10 minutes, 5 minutes of the film where it starts to kind of resolve everything, there's some satisfying notes because if you've been watching this franchise for a while, this is now a decade you've been spending with these characters, and it kind of gives some closure to some things, some satisfying resolution. And that's what I liked best about the film. It was directed by Patrick Wilson, the star of the first, second, and as well as this film. And I think he does a good job. He's competent enough as a director, as able to deliver some of those jump scares that you want from an Insidious film. And like I said, he makes you care about the characters more than you did in the previous movies in the franchise. With that said, I don't think this movie really worked. Let's move on to the bad. So like I said, in the good, where this movie works is that they had an idea about exploring the Lamberts 10 years later and how the events of the previous films would affect them in the future. But what they didn't have was a compelling story and conflict for them to face in the present. So it introduces the characters, and you get a catch up. It's kind of interesting. It goes, okay, that actually fits. That makes sense that they would be in this place in light of what happened before. And you get this journey about them working through all of that. So that works. But you go to an Insidious film for horror, for scares, for all of this exploration of astral projection and this other realm. And that's, of course, in this movie, but it almost feels kind of secondary to the exploration of the family, in which case it just kind of feels like we're meandering. And the big concept here is that we've got these two lead characters that don't realize what happened to them 9 years earlier, so they're trying to figure out why they've been broken all of this time. And so they're searching for answers that the audience already has. And the movie is just exploring all of this stuff, retreading all of this stuff that we already saw in the first two movies. And it doesn't start to really move things forward until we get into the last 20 minutes of the film. So it just kind of meanders around, playing around with Ty Simpkin in college, and the dad like, why am I messed up? Going to the doctor, exploring different things separate from each other. And so there's just not like stakes. You know, the first one kicks off and weird things are happening, and then a kid is in a coma. We got to figure out what's going on. And it gives you this mystery kind of pulling you into this world. The second one, we know something's wrong with the dad. And then it's kind of watching that escalate and how do we resolve that? This one, there's not something like that in the film. We're just kind of like wandering around as they're trying to figure out what happened to them and slowly discover these powers that they have. And so there's no forward momentum. There's no urgency to what's taking place. So it's tough to get invested in it, in particular because the main thing driving the story is a mystery that the audience already has the answers to. The other big problem kind of with the story here is that it's all about the family and how they're broken because of what happened, and kind of the journey of them trying to re-find one another, but they're separated the entire film until like the beginning and ends, they're together. Besides that, the son is at college, the dad is off on his own deal, and the mom is kind of doing her own thing. And so it doesn't properly feel like we're actually resolving these issues and working through them in a compelling way, because everyone's separated. You're just telling us stuff that we already know while having random issues at the doctor and going to frat parties and stuff like that. So for me, the movie has ideas that were kind of interesting. There was almost the right idea here of where would they be 10 years later and what would the damage be done and how would they resolve that as a family, but they didn't know how to bring back in the central conflict, these other beings of evil. They're barely in the film. They're barely explored. We don't get much new added to it. And that's disappointing, since that's what we go to these movies for. So when you put it all together, it's competently enough of a telling of a story that just wasn't very compelling or urgent or had anything pushing it forward besides I'm interested in these characters, kind of. So unfortunately, a pretty big letdown for me. Overall, it's a C on the entertainment scale of 5.5. And most people can skip this one. If you're a hardcore fan, just wait to stream it. There's no urgent rush to check this one out in the theaters. If you like this video, I got more like it. You can check them out in those playlists right over there, and I'll have a ranking of the Insidious movies coming in just a few days. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.